You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I can see Leval. Leval, you're welcome. Just share the link with your friends. And today I'm welcoming you all again to the debate. Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Whoever said that Africa is still a continent that is needy? Then today you're going to get an interesting debate from young students all over Africa. We are having dynamic young people, and of course, they're going to be debating today on the question: should Africa continue depending on foreign aid for development? Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to again another edition of our conversation, the debate. And we have the host, Mr. Elvis Bolifo. Elvis, you're welcome. And of course, I welcome also Maxwell, who is going to be one of the panelists today. Um, I also welcome Mrs. Tariro. I welcome Francisco Miller from Kenya. And of course, I welcome Mr. Aziz Joseph from Cameroon. Mr. Bolifor, you're welcome. This is your platform and it is your panel. I hand over to you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Welcome everybody for being there today again on our program, The Debate, which comes up on Mondays. And it's a platform where youth, young Africans come together to decry the injustice done to our continent and to seek possible ways to rebuild our continent and to make it a place to be. With me this afternoon, I am your host, Molifo Elvis, and with me, we will be having Tariro, who is Tariro Belinda Moparanzi. She's 19 years old and she's from Zimbabwe, studying architecture in Namibia. And my second panelist is Mr. Maxwell Manza from Zambia, and he is a medical student. Third on my panel is Mr. Francisco Miller Kiboye, co-founder Relationship Haven, and he is a human rights activist. And the fourth panelist is Mr. Azi Joseph from Cameroon. He facilitates history with the Ministry of Secondary Education. You are all welcome to this platform. Like I said, this is your platform, this is your space, and we are here today on the program, The Debate, and our topic is: should Africa continue depending on foreign aid for development? This is the topic we will be handling this afternoon, and I have a very rich panel with a 19-year-old that is very interesting. This is somebody who will go through the 2063 program for Africa, where we are hoping that by then Africa will be the best place to be. You're all welcome. Like I said, today our topic is: should Africa continue to depend on foreign aid for development? We will be talking lengthily on this topic, and on my panel, I will have people who will be going for and some will be going against. Mr. Azi, you're welcome to my panel. Mr. Azi, can you get me? Okay, Mr. Azi, it's not getting me right. Your microphone is muted. I want to welcome all of you again. I wanted to have a word from you for the listeners. Yes, Mr. Azi, you are on. Mr. Azi. Oh, Mr. Aziz is not getting me. Maxwell, can you say something for the audience who are listening to us all over the world?
Okay. Thank you so very much to our listeners. We are here to discuss some interesting topic, and I hope you find it interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Francisco, can you unmute your microphone and say a word to those listening to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elvis. This session, I think it's going to be one of the most interesting sessions, and I think it's a game changer as far as Africa is concerned. Thank you very much.
Tariro, I was saying that today we are looking at how should Africa continue depending on foreign aid for development. What do you have to say about the topic?
I think it's a very interesting topic, and I think that after the viewers have watched the debate, it's very important to think deep.
Okay, Tariro says the viewers will be so interested and they will be thinking deeper after listening to this debate. Maxwell, are you on? Okay, Maxwell is back with us. A word for our listeners before we get into the debate proper. Maxwell, are you with me?
Yes, I'm always here. I'm online.
All right.
I'm here. I can get
A word for our listeners before we get into the program proper.
to our dear listeners. We are very excited to be on this panel. We're going to elaborate more on Africa. Africa is for us, and we can only develop Africa by ourselves. So this is an interesting topic, and I hope you find it interesting.
Thank you so much for being prompt in the program. We are going to begin with the very first issue. We are talking about Africa depending on foreign aid for development. Maybe we begin by looking at what aid or foreign aid actually is all about. Mr. Azi, what can you say is foreign aid? When we talk of foreign aid, many people don't understand what we mean by foreign aid. Unmute your microphone. Mr. Azi, can you unmute your microphone so that the listeners can get you? Okay, that is good. We're waiting to hearing from Mr. Azi, who should be having connection problems. That is one of the problems equally we are having in Africa, where some companies have to provide us these services, but they end up not doing it very well because we keep getting in and out of connection. Mr. Azi, if you are getting me, you unmute your microphone and you explain to us what you understand or what is your take about the idea of foreign aid. I can't get Mr. Azi.
Are you getting me now?
Yes, I'm getting you now 5 on 5.
Thank you.
I can get you Yes, I can get you. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just saying that if not distinguished, to be part of this very rich debate program. As concerned the meaning and definition and the scope of foreign aid. I think that we can first and foremost, within our context, say that it is referring to financial assistance that foreign countries give to African countries. That is IMF, World Bank, multilateral, bilateral countries, providing some loans, providing material, providing even technical assistance to African countries, which are still under economic doldrums. So I think, in brief, that's it.
Thank you so much. Maxwell, I saw like you were nodding. What do you have to say? What is your take? Or what do you understand about foreign aid?
Okay, interesting. So foreign aid is just basically the money that a rich country or a certain country voluntarily transfer to another country. So now, an aid, it can be in a form of a loan, it can be in a form of a grant, it can even be material things. So it's voluntarily being given to a certain country by a certain country through government relations. So basically, that's how I can define foreign aid.
So foreign aid is aid coming from another one country to a country that is serving as the recipient. Okay, Tariro, are you with me?
Yes, I
Let
am.
us get from you, Tariro, what is all about, what do you understand about foreign aid? In simple definition, you're telling somebody foreign aid, what is it all about?
I believe foreign aid is international transfer of either capital, goods, or services. I think a lot of people kind of limit international aid to capital or finances, but it's not necessarily just finances. It's also things such as trainings, it's things such as humanitarian aid, services, and so forth. So that's my basic understanding of what it is.
Okay, you say that foreign aid doesn't necessarily mean money. It can be services, it can be items that are sent to a country, especially when they are in a disastrous situation, like what we had in Haiti. Yes, Francesco, you were on, and I saw you nodding. Surely you have something to tell us about this issue of foreign aid.
Just about the definition. I think foreign aid is not just about money, but it also comes in form of equipment and services that are provided for people, countries, or organizations who need them to provide for themselves. You see, most of this aid goes to poor countries, as far as I'm concerned. That's my definition of aid.
Okay, thank you so much. We have had a nutshell of what aid means, and if we understand better, aid doesn't necessarily mean just money. Aid can come in various forms. It can come in form of items sent to a country, foodstuff equally sent to a country, and this is always aimed at ameliorating the situation of that country. But looking at the huge amount of money which comes to Africa as aid, one would have expected a drastic improvement in living conditions, but instead, this makes just the rich people to get richer and the poorer get really poorer. How does foreign aid therefore work? Because we should have been expecting the opposite of what is actually happening. How does foreign aid actually work? Mr. Azi?
Yeah, Tamolfo, for once more giving opportunity to talk. I think that when this loan is sent to our continents, it is through multi relations, or sometimes our leaders get the money and maybe sometimes not use it in the right direction. Sometimes the money is misdirected to other projects. Sometimes the money is embezzled. Sometimes the money is used for personal issues. Some even take the money to fight wars. Sometimes people use the money to sponsor wars and so on. That is why we are still on the same position as of yesterday. Are you getting me?
I am getting you 5 on 5, yeah? It means that this aid, maybe as you explained, doesn't actually serve the purpose for which it was intended. Francesco, any idea, contrary idea from what Mr. Azi has? Unmute your microphone. Unmute your microphone so that we can get you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. When we talk about aid, we hope for a better future, a better life. But in this instance, in this case, people use aid for their own personal gains. As much as we would wish to see the lives of many people change, but there are those people who actually authorize the aid, and at the end of the day, when the aid is here, none of us, the people who are down, let me say, mostly the citizens, we don't feel the effect or the impact of aid amongst our community at all. So I agree with him.
That is interesting. Tariro, what do you say about this? How does foreign aid actually work when we should be expecting a reversal of what we actually see on the ground? Countries receiving aid, but they do not move an inch from the position that they are many years till date.
I think we need to understand that there are basically three different types of aid. So you have like multilateral aid, you have bilateral aid, you have non-governmental, non-profit charity aid. So the problem comes in with bilateral aid when it's then one government giving to another government, and then you find like gross mismanagement of that specific aid, and that's where we get situations where the aid necessarily doesn't reach individuals on a grassroots level. I think the aid that is very beneficial though is like, for example, the non-governmental, non-profit charity aids, and even like multilateral financial aid does help often. So I think the problem comes in with bilateral when it's just government to government interacting.
That will be taking me to my next question. But let me get what Maxwell has to say about this aid, how it actually works.
Well, it's so interesting points from from the panel. You see, the aid actually on its own, it's meant to help the less marginalized in the society. But this is very far from the fact. The leaders or the government or those people who are entrusted with these aids, oftentimes it's just misappropriation, and those aids only work to their interest. They just want to enrich themselves. It doesn't help those people down. It doesn't really help at all. And it's really sad that Africa has continued in this terrain, and we hope in the next generation or anytime soon, this view is going to change. Because see, if something is given as an aid, it is meant to help, not to enrich a certain section of people or a few individuals, let's say maybe in government or those that are entrusted with disbursing of these aid. So really, it's a sad situation.
Okay, it's actually a sad situation like we're observing on the ground, where sub-Saharan countries especially continue to receive huge sums of money. But when I listen to you present, I am tempted to ask the question, who actually negotiates for aid? Because if aid has to come to a country and it ends up in the pockets of particular people, I am tempted to ask Mr. Azi, who actually negotiates for aid? Mr. Azi is gone. I take Maxwell, who actually negotiates for aid, Maxwell, because from all you've said, from all what the panelists have said, it shows that some particular people are responsible for this aid, and aid may even come in without has come in. So who actually do they sit on the negotiation table to get aid coming in from other countries?
So, Mr. Mboifo, here's the problem. The people or the citizens of Africa, or let's say a particular country, they're not usually, consulted on these aids, and they're not even given an upper hand to negotiate on these aids. Instead, the government will check up the road to negotiate for these aids. And most of these aid, Mr. Mboifo, you'll be very sad to note that they do come into these countries. The African countries do receive these aids without the majority knowing that there is a certain aid that has been negotiated or received. You see, so it's actually the government, that takes up the role of negotiations, and most of the time it's misappropriated.
If I get you correctly, it is the top officials who do the negotiation. Francesco,
Yes.
do you have a contrary idea? Is the aid negotiated by the commoners? Is it by particular people in the name of the country? And that is why we can't get accountability of the aid that is coming in. What is actually the problem? What is cooking about this aid issue?
As much as we, the people, would wish to be consulted as far as aid comes in through the county governments, through the wards of, through the community health volunteers and such people, it is unfortunate that it's a plan that some specific group of people, most of the high government officials, who sit down and plan all these things from the word go. So as much as we would wish to be consulted, there is nothing like that happening. So what I'd really wish for at the moment is that as days go by, according to the Agenda 26.3, I'm hoping that these top government officials, these top people who negotiate for such activities, will come up with a system whereby we can be consulted, so that we might monitor the aid from the word go. As much as I'm not actually into the aid, because I really believe we as Africans have the capability and the strength to stand on our own. We have the resources, we have the knowledge from the eras of colonialism to now. We have the knowledge, we have the brains. So I think as days go by, we need to be consulted as well.
Francesco says the indigenous or the citizens have to be consulted so that there is accountability on how aid is gotten and how aid is coming in. Tariro, what is good about aid? Let me come to you. What is so good about aid, foreign aid? What is a
I
good part
think
of foreign aid?
I'd say that aid tackles the parts that governments neglect greatly, or either areas where government just simply can't afford to improve. I mean, we can give the example of Ethiopia in 2000. It was ranked like the third poorest country in the world. And in that kind of situation, the government really couldn't do anything. The moment that aid was then applied to Ethiopia in 2001, when they started getting these funds and they started getting this aid, Ethiopia increased significantly in regards to the economy. So now we see that where Ethiopia stands in Africa economically is that they're industrializing way faster than a lot of other African countries. And I feel like that's merely one example that shows how important aid is, especially when a state is in either war-torn or in a situation where the government simply has no ability to get the citizens out of that impoverished, horrible state that they're in.
Have network hitches there. Tariro, can you come again? We didn't get you clearly.
I was saying that
we lost Tariro
aid
there.
really helps.
Okay. I don't know, maybe it's my network that is not very good this way, because I'm getting your line is broken. And I was asking that what is good about aid, because from the rundown that we have been having, I have the impression that aid actually is not helping our African continent, but instead dragging us behind. So, Mr. Azi, thanks for coming back. Thanks for joining the platform. We were actually looking at the bad side, or I was asking Tariro already what is good about it, and she gave her point already. And I come to you, Mr. Azi, and get a grip from you. What is actually bad about foreign aid? Mr. Azi, are you with us? We lost him again. I will be coming to. Okay, Mr. Azi is coming back. That is the problem we have here in Africa. Network on and off, and we are struggling to survive with it. And that is why we are decrying that there should be no monopoly
Yes.
on connections,
Yeah.
and that we should have good connections that can go fluid for hours without being interrupted. Because at any one moment, connection is interrupted, and we are struggling. That Africa by 2063 should be a place to be. Yes, Mr. Azi, you're on. Are you getting me clearly? If you are, then I wish to hear from you what actually is bad about foreign aid. I can't get Mr. Azi, surely due to network problems. And I was saying that what is, or asking the question, what is actually bad about foreign aid? Mr. Azi, if you are getting me, please do unmute your phone or your microphone so that you can, your voice can be gotten and heard by those who are listening to you. Do unmute your phone, your microphone, please. Mr. Azi, can you unmute? Your microphone is muted. Okay, his microphone remains muted, but Francesco is right on. I guess he's getting me clearly. Francesco, what can you say is so bad or bad about foreign aid? Because we are not getting the expected results for African countries, sub-Saharan countries, of course, which have been given help or aid for so many years today, but it seems nothing is coming out from the aid. So, what is making aid so bad?
Okay, thank you very much. You see, aid, what makes aid very bad? There are a lot of points that run across my mind. For example, you tend to, if you have a pet, let's assume you have a cat, right? And then from its young age, you give it you make it get used to milk and meat. That cat can't eat kales, can't eat ugali. That cat can't even take any other this other it will choose, that it will just decide that that's what it needs to take. For example, when dependency, ever since independence, African countries have relied on aid. However, this has created a dependence rather than independence for these countries. You see, governments know that there will always be aid, and therefore they do not formulate policies that spur movement away from aid. So I don't think that it is very aid actually has that much impact on us, but it's just for personal gain for some few individuals. So that's one thing that's bad about aid. It makes us look weak. It makes us adopt to how can I, we are like slaves to it. We can't do without it. That, let's assume from tomorrow no aid comes in Africa. Believe you me, if we don't have bright minds, we are going to fail to we are going to fall. It's more of a fall. So that's what I think. One of the points is dependency.
So, Africa is dependent on foreign aid, and
It's
it is
it is
actually a bad thing. Tariro, you are for the fact that aid is good, and you are saying that Africa is depending already so much on aid, and this has surely rendered Africans to go to slumber because aid will always come from outside, and they are sure that the money will keep coming. But then, what do you think is the problem or the advantage of depending on aid solely by African countries, of course?
I think saying that like African countries are dependent on aid is a bit of a misinformed context. Because if statistically you look at the 5 countries in Africa that get the most aid, or the 5 countries that are highly dependent on aid. It's your Liberia, it's your Solomon Island, it's your Haiti, it's your Burundi, it's your DRC. These are countries that have faced civil war for over 10 years, for about 10 to 14 years. These are the countries that are dependent on aid. When you get to countries such as Namibia that haven't faced civil war and so forth, you get institutions refusing to give them aid because Namibia is ranked upper level country economically in regards to individuals and their salaries and so forth. So it's a bit misinformed to say that all of Africa is dependent on aid. Not all African countries are dependent on aid. All African countries do use aid, however, as a form to improve their economy or improve specific sectors in the economy. The countries that are dependent on the aid are countries that have no other options but to depend on that aid.
You're saying that African countries, some countries just have to depend on the aid, but just Francesco is around. I wanted to get from Mr. Azi, but he is not around. What actually is the problem with dependency on aid? Can Africa actually move away? Yeah, Mr. Azi is coming. If he comes on, I have Mr. Azi coming on. Yes, Mr. Azi, are you getting me, Mr. Azi? Yes, Maxwell is around. We're talking about Africa depending solely on foreign aid. Do you think this dependence can be a problem, much problem? Africa depending solely on aid, can it become a problem, or is it a problem actually already at hand?
Yes, it's a big problem because it has actually allowed Africans to be, over dependent on these aids, and actually being so dependent on these aids has led into much corruption. We have so much corruption in Zambia, in Africa at large. So conduit actually aid has become a conduit for corruption. Okay. And if we just continue like this, Africa will never grow. So the Africa that we want at large is an independent Africa where we make use of our resources. Africa is endowed with a lot of resources. We have minerals. We have got a lot of things, okay, that can make Africa a better place for us all. Depending on aid all the time, it has just made us slaves, So I've got 3 points to make there on the on the aid, how bad it has become. So there's what we call aid tying, Aid tying just involves a donor country. They give you the monies, they give you everything, and then they dictate what you can do with that money. They'll tell you to say, okay, we have funded you, we have given you this money, but you can do what? You can get the services from us. Even the contracts, they will dictate you to say, you are going to get the contracts from us. So now see, how beneficial is that? They give you an aid, or let's say maybe in a form of a loan, and then that very, donor country, a rich country that has given you that, again, it demands you to use their materials or to use their contractors and everything. So it means that the locals are not benefiting anything. So aid, basically, it has just contributed to corruption in Africa at large. In fact, it has been noted that aid, it doesn't just come on a silver platter. It has a cost accompanying it. When you get an aid in a form of a loan, let's say a loan or a grant or anything, you need to pay for it. And this has really put huge pressure on African countries to pay back these loans that are gotten in a form of Euro bonds and grants and the like. So really, it is a problem. It is a problem because everything from the treasury, actually, Africa would it has put pressure on the treasury in such a way that whatever is being gotten, okay, it's just being used to repay back the loans. So really, I don't see anything good about aid, in a nutshell.
My net actually a problem. Okay, Mr. Azi. Mr. Azi is no more. I wanted actually to get from Mr. Azi what he thinks is the problem of Africa depending on foreign aid. When Maxwell is there, Maxwell, can we hear from you what dependence actually on foreign aid can become of African countries that are solely relying on this aid for some works to be done or some developmental work to be done in the country?
Thank you so much, Mr. Mboifo. I had highlighted a few points. I'm sure your network was just quite bad. So what I said was foreign aid has contributed to Africa's corruption. It has become a conduit for corruption. A lot of leaders are taking advantage of these aid to enrich themselves instead of the less marginalized in the society. Then the other point I had put across was aid tying. These aids sometimes they come in a form of a loan, sometimes they come in a form of a grant or a gift. Here it becomes a problem when it comes in a form of a loan, because now it will put a huge pressure on the nation treasury to pay back these loans. Okay, it's just more like when you're owing someone, you're never free. You actually become a slave to that person. So they'll dictate you whatever they want. They'll say, no, we want this from Africa. Because you owe them, you have no choice but to abide with what they want. So the other point I had put across was aid tying. Most of these aid, they're being tied to something. A situation, I'll give an example. A donor country will release the funds and dictate to say, okay, we've given you the money, and then we want you to buy materials from our country, or the contractors that are going to build those roads, that are going to build those schools in that particular recipient country, should actually come from that same donor country. So this has not been helpful to the locals. Let's say the local contractors, they're not getting these contracts, you know. So this is how bad it is. This is how bad it is, and over relying on these aid and everything, they're just enslaving us. So as Africa, we can build our own Africa. We are a country that is endowed with a lot of resources. So if we have got a lot of water bodies, if we have got minerals, you know, why don't we exchange within ourselves? Why don't we say Zambia has got copper?
So how can we move from this dependence?
So that are the challenges that we are also faced with in Africa. And I am hoping that Mr. Bolivar is coming up again.
We have free connection hitches and it's going on and off. This is what we are decrying.
Mr. Mboifo, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm getting you 5 on 5.
Okay, you asked me a question, what should be done?
Yes, to move away from this dependence on foreign loans. If it is not helping us, then we actually have to move away from it. What can we do? Or what is the strategy to use to go away from foreign loans?
Okay, thank you so much. So I'll put up 3 points. I call them priorities. Africa should have certain priorities. So I'll put priority number 1 as a job creation. So if African countries can create jobs for its locals, this whole issue of depending from aid and the like would be the issue of the past. So that's my priority number 1. Africa has the youngest population in the world with with 200 million age between 15 and 24. So if we empower Africans, we find jobs for these Africans, we won't be relying from aid all the time. We won't be relying from help across the globe. We can do this on our own because we're a country that has so much resources on it. So the other point is economic engagement. I had said earlier on, economic engagement is very important, or say regional integration. So in moving away from Western assistance, African governments should seek to improve regional integration initiatives, which are key to a sustainable development. What I mean is, if I'll give an example. If Zambia has copper, Cameroon has, let's say, has gold, why can't we trade within ourselves? Because we know that money at the end of the day remains in Africa. It doesn't go outside. Moreover, you have your copper, you have your resources, and these resources are being dictated. You don't make prices for yourselves. They'll say, okay, you have your copper, but at the metal exchange in UK or wherever it is, they'll tell you to say, we are buying this your copper at this much. Okay, so you're actually not benefiting anything. So moving forward, it's not supposed to be an aid kind of a thing. It's supposed to be actually not partnership. It's supposed to be some kind of trade partnership. That's what we want. We want trade partnership whereby Africa benefits and the Western countries also benefit. What we have seen of late is that we are very disadvantaged in the trading aspect. So that was my priority number 2. And then why as Africans don't we have a platform whereby we engage each other in this economic development? Why don't we say that Nigeria has got a company that is good in building schools? Why don't we contract them? Why should we call for Chinese to build our schools? Why don't we involve other African countries? So really, moving forward, if we want to see Africa developing, we need to engage each other. Over reliance on the donors, I say no. It's not sustainable for a long term.
Okay, thank you so much for the contribution. I really want Mr. Azi to be around so that he can help us with some, historical facts about foreign aid, because foreign aid was expected to be helping us. We are getting so dependent on foreign aid, but not getting developed. So we should be looking at ways to get out from it. But I have a question that worries me. What is it that? Yes, Mr. Azi is around. I don't know if you got my question when I was asking you what is bad about foreign aid. You went offline when I was just about asking you that question. And I get the second question, why you think dependence on foreign aid by African countries can be a problem. You can roll on with the 2 questions at once. Let's get your point on that.
Yeah.
Mr. Azi, are you getting me? We are looking at the problems of Africa depending solely on foreign aid and why you think this dependence can be a problem. And we equally wanted you to tell us what can be so bad if we have to always depend on foreign aid. Network is not treating us so well today. The lines are getting broken. We're losing Mr. Azide, who is a resource person who was supposed to give us some historical background on foreign aid. We were hoping that he will be joining us again. But then Tariro is online. Tariro is right there with me. Tariro, are there some positive aspects you think can be brought out by a country depending on foreign aid? Is it advantageous to a country?
Um, I don't necessarily think I believe it's very disingenuous to defend dependence, be it like socially, economically, or politically. But I do think that we need to take into context a country's economic state. It's fair to say that SADC shouldn't solely depend on international aid or foreign aid. But I believe, as I mentioned prior, like countries like Burundi, countries like DRC, countries that economically are in a very bad place, and especially when you consider the whole COVID-19 situation, how do those countries already before COVID-19 are in a bad economic space get hit by a pandemic? How do they get out of that pandemic? We can't say regional ties are going to lift these countries out of their economic state, because that's simply not true. The countries that are least hit financially by COVID-19 are unfortunately countries that are in the West. They're in the best position to make sure that Burundi, DRC, Solomon Islands, and so forth get out of this pandemic in a better state. And I feel like when it's in that kind of situation, it's very important for you to then look to Western states and depend on that aid to get you out. And I can give proper examples where aid has worked. Like you look at Rwanda, it has the best health system in Africa. It's done that because of the aid that it has acquired. When you consider the Nigerian civil war, French military aid is what protected the civilians. When you look at, once again, Ethiopia, the reason why they aren't anymore the third poorest country in the world is because of the aid that they received. So I think we need to consider states' economic stance and how aid then helps those countries when they're in a very bad situation.
Okay, I can get Mr. Isaac coming back. Can you ride on with two questions I asked you before your lines went off, Mr. Isaac? Unmute your microphone so that we can get you. Mr. Azi, unmute your microphone, please, so that we can get you clearly. Problems of hoping to get Mr. Azi back. He's struggling to be back. The network is not so good on our side.
No,
we didn't have.
Hello?
Yes, we can get. Yes, Mr. Azi, I'm getting you. Mr. Azi, oh, Mr. Azi is gone again. I have just Tariro and Francisco who have been so present throughout the program, and we are getting information that foreign aid, instead of making Africa to be more developed, is taking Africa back into slavery. Surely because this aid is not well handled by those who negotiate for the aid, and equally they do not put the aid into use for what was intended to. And we are getting all observations that instead of getting aid from foreign countries, we should struggle to, enhance our own capacities and try to do our own things ourselves. But I have a problem. What is the direction of aid? What direction does aid really come from? Because one may have the impression that foreign, because when I'm in Cameroon, I talk of foreign aid. Those who are in Germany, if aid is coming from Cameroon, they will talk of foreign aid. What is the direction actually that aid takes? Francesco is with me. Francesco, what direction does aid take? Because we talk of foreign aid, but African countries to Europeans, yeah, we are foreigners to them. Or if aid is coming from Africa, it shows that providing them with foreign aid. So what direction actually does aid take? Francesco, you are on. Mr. Azi, you're on. If you can get me clearly, please go on with the questions I asked you before your connection became a problem.
Yes, I'm.
Right
I
on,
was
Mr.
saying that
Azi.
foreign aid is a problem because it makes us not to develop initiatives. Are you getting me?
I'm
I
getting
was
you
saying that
5 on
foreign
5.
aid makes us not to develop our own initiatives. It makes us to be too dependent. Secondly, you know that the only way that we can come out of these economic doldrums is that the foreign countries could sell us their technology. For example, sometimes when they give those financial assistance, there are strings that are attached to it. They attach strings to it. For example, there are conditionalities. They will not give you financial aid to develop industry. They will give you financial aid to do things that will not make your economy to get strong and vibrant. So that is why I'm saying that the problem is their conditionality. This money, they don't use it for the purpose for which the money is meant for. They use to sponsor wars. They even take some of the aid and bank again in the foreign banks. This very money that they have banked foreign banks, they use it and give as loans. It be like a vicious cycle. That's why I'm saying that that's the problem. That please, can you give me? Are you getting me?
I'm getting you, Mr. Azi. 5 on 5. Right on. You can go on, Mr. Azi. I'm getting you. Our lines really are not the best today. The program has really been a problem going through with connection problems. I'm hoping that Mr. Azi comes back. All through, I've had Tariro and Francesco who have been on throughout, and we are hoping Maxwell coming on now. Yeah, Maxwell had already contributed on this aspect of dependence on foreign aid. And now, why is aid? We already saw that aid is not helping Africa. What do we think actually can be done? But I was asking the direction even before I forget the direction that aid actually takes, because I was saying that for I who is in Cameroon, aid coming from Germany, from America is foreign. Whereas if I have to send aid to them, it will equally be looked at for as foreign aid. But my problem is, what is the direction? Which direction actually does aid take? Because when we look at aid, it's just like the aid is just from richer countries to Africa. Is there nothing Africa too can give over as aid to these other European countries? Francesco, you are with me. You can take the question.
Yes, thank you very much. Going back to Tariro's point on aid helps countries that are going through a tough time, which brings us to this point
Francisco,
where,
are you with me? I was asking that what is the direction that
yes,
aid actually takes?
yes, I'm with you. I'm getting you clear. You getting me? You're getting me,
Yes, we are getting you. Go on.
Mr. Elvis?
Go on,
Yes, I'm getting you. Right
Francisco.
on.
Yes, back to
Yes, I'm
Tariro's
getting you.
point.
What direction actually does aid take? Yes.
Now I'm going back to Tariro's point where she was saying that aid helps Africans that are going through a tough time. It's more of a rescue project, right? I was asking, don't we as Africans have that unity and that heart to support each other? Don't we have our own union? For example, the African Union. Can't the AU support the African countries? So I don't think that we actually really need aid from other countries as much. Yes, it might be aid in Africa still, but we need to support ourselves. We need to start thinking on the direction whereby we are backing ourselves up, backing our neighboring countries back up, um, and putting our interests first. We have everything that is needed, so we shouldn't see aid in the form of money or financial support coming from maybe the US, maybe the Britain to Africa. I don't think it should be like that. I think it's high time we we do things our own way. We have everything we need.
Okay, one last word from Tariro. We are rounding up. We have 1 hour. We had 1 hour and just about 7 minutes. Tariro, do you have one last word about aid? Why aid is beneficial to countries that need them? What to say to our listeners? Maybe looking at the advantage of aid because we know aid in itself is not all just bad. Tariro.
Um, I believe I have mentioned all of the major benefits, but just to respond to what Francisco did say, I agree that as Africa, we are supposed to depend on each other and we're supposed to help each other. But the unfortunate truth is that it doesn't always happen like that. I mean, when, for example, Zimbabwe was in a very bad economic state, SADC did nothing about it. SADC didn't even help their own neighboring regional body, regional state, you know. And like you look at states and see how states have sort of lost faith in the African Union to a certain extent. I mean, an annual African Union meeting is not met, is not attended by half of the
This is
it's
exactly
the
the
unfortunate
challenge we're
truth, but
having.
it is like that, however.
Thank you, Tariro. Your host has a problem with connection, and I'm just getting in. And you were talking about the unfortunate reality. I have the impression that Francisco still wants to say something.
Yes, thank you very much. You see, African countries look like they are sovereign states. They are independent and democratic, but the economic system and political policy is directed by external powers. You see, from donor countries. The countries bargain for economic influence and set policy standards for the receiving countries. Neocolonialism is the mirror face of colonialism in the modern crisis. As Madam Sampon, it was it yesterday. It was on Saturday, I think. Yeah, you say that once a debtor, always a slave. I don't know if you get me when I say that. You told
Yes.
me, you told us that on a Saturday. Yeah,
Mm,
this
mm,
neocolonialism way of thinking has only worked to drive Africa into a capitalist system. The West
mhm,
is exploiting Africa on the guise of providing aid. In fact, there is a report on 2014 that estimates that Africa receives over 500 billion annually from donors, but only
mhm,
200 billion, roughly 200 billion, is taken from the continent in different forms, including
mhm,
brain drain. That's where the point whereby you see brain drain brings us to the point whereby we have youths who are very capable, but
mhm,
at the end of the day, because they can't receive that support, they decide to just go and exercise their passion, what they are good at in other countries. You see, then we have
mhm,
profits from international companies, illegal financial flows, loggings, and the the debt repayment.
mhm,
Africa loses more than what it gets from foreign aid.
mhm.
That is my point for now.
Thank you so much. And we are almost coming to the end of our conversation today. In getting your conversation, I want to read a few words from our listeners and viewers. Marie T says, no money coming from so called Western aka white countries or organizations should be called aid. White Western organizations have no position to aid. We should do is pay back as much as we can. Apology and be responsible and clear about how we are exploiting Africa and the African people. Then we have another very interesting commentary from Tracy Kadada. Gadada, you're welcome to our conversation this evening. And she says, the connection is bad, but I'm enjoying the debate about foreign aid. That is what is killing Africa. Whenever you see them giving any Africa financial aid, no, there is something that they want. Why can't they support Somalia? There is nothing there they can get there. But in West Africa, they know there is mineral. In Somalia, nothing. In Sudan and Nigeria or in Kenya, we cannot even count. All these resources, if used properly, can pay all our debt and make Africa great again. We should unite like what Sumpon is doing. Thank you so much to our viewers. Thank you so very much to all our dynamic speakers. Tariro, I thank you so much for taking your time and defending your point. I thank you, Francisco, for being also here. Maxwell, thank you so very much. Mr. Azzy Joseph had a very, very terrible network problem, and your host himself had the problem, and so I had to come in. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. You see, the conversation goes on and on, but for sure we have come to the realization that Africa really needs no help or aid, because we all have the ability, the resources that it needs to build our continent and our diverse countries. Ladies and gentlemen, we leave you now and we meet next week, same time, and hope to see you next time with another debate. Be a part of our debate, and we appreciate you from watching all over where you are watching. Thank you so much. And to all my speakers, thank you for doing a great job. God bless you.